All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to revisit a classic animal partnership, one you probably remember from biology class. But what if I told you that simple, friendly story we were all taught, well, isn't the whole truth?
Okay, so picture this, the African savanna. You've definitely seen images like this one, right? These little birds are called oxpeckers, and they're just hitching a ride on huge animals like this Cape buffalo. The textbook story paints this as perfect cooperation, a beautiful example of two different species helping each other out.
So let's start there. Let's look at that classic textbook story, the neat and tidy version of this relationship.
In biology, this kind of everybody wins relationship has a name: mutualism. It's a type of symbiosis where two organisms are in this super close relationship and, well, both of them get something really good out of the deal.
The arrangement seems pretty straightforward, almost elegant. The oxpecker gets a reliable, moving buffet of ticks and other parasites. In return, the host, whether it's a buffalo, a giraffe, or a rhino, gets a totally free pest control service. I mean, it sounds perfect, right? But, scientists, they looked a little closer, and they started noticing some behaviors that didn't quite fit this friendly, cooperative picture. It turns out our perfect roommate might just have a secret.
And this brings us to the big question. Is mutualism the whole story, or is there maybe a darker side to this famous partnership? Because as it turns out, oxpeckers don't just eat ticks. They also have a taste for something else: blood.
Yep, you heard that right. They're known to peck at existing wounds to keep them open, and sometimes they'll even create new ones, feeding on the host's blood and tissue. This, obviously, can slow down healing and cause real harm. All of a sudden, our perfect roommate is looking a lot more like a freeloader. The biological term for that is parasitism.
So, which is it? Are they helpful friends or harmful parasites? It's time to play detective, follow the evidence, and see exactly where the data leads us. Now, before we look at the clues, it's really important to get this. This isn't a simple yes or no answer. It's much better to think of this relationship as existing on a continuum, a kind of sliding scale, with purely helpful mutualism on one end and purely harmful parasitism way down at the other.
Our first clue is all about their diet. I mean, if the oxpeckers are mainly just helpful tick eaters, then it stands to reason they'd be more attracted to animals that have more ticks, right? More ticks should equal more birds.
And would you look at that? The data here is crystal clear. This graph plots how many ticks an animal has against how much the oxpeckers like that animal, and you can see a strong positive correlation. Simply put, the more ticks an animal has, the more the oxpeckers want to be there.
So, our first piece of evidence points very strongly toward the friend theory. They are definitely interested in eating ticks, which helps the host. That's one big point for team mutualism.
Okay, let's move to our second clue. Now, let's flip it. If the oxpeckers are secretly little vampires, mostly after blood, then we'd expect them to prefer animals with thinner hides. Thinner skin would make it way easier to create a wound and get to the blood.
But when we look at the data here, the picture gets messy. This graph shows the host's hide thickness versus oxpecker preference, and there's just no clear pattern. The data points are all over the place. There's no real statistical link. Some thick-skinned animals are popular, some aren't. Same goes for the thin-skinned ones.
So this second clue doesn't really push us one way or the other. It doesn't support the parasitic theory, but it doesn't really refute it either. The jury is still out on this one. Time for our final clue. What about the size of the host? Do bigger animals, like a huge Cape buffalo, attract more oxpeckers than smaller ones, like an impala?
And the data shows another really strong connection. Just like with the number of ticks, there's a clear positive correlation here. The bigger the animal, the more the oxpeckers seem to prefer it.
Now this finding fits perfectly with our first clue. Why prefer bigger animals? Well, because a bigger animal is like a bigger habitat. It's capable of supporting a much larger population of ticks. So this again points to their main goal being a hunt for parasites.
So, we've looked at the clues. We have strong evidence for tick eating and pretty inconclusive evidence for blood seeking based on skin thickness. So what's the final verdict on the oxpecker? Friend or foe? The answer, it turns out, is it depends. As this quote from the research suggests, the relationship isn't fixed. It's not always mutualism or parasitism. It exists on that spectrum we talked about, and its position can actually shift. And what makes it change? Context.
With native species like impalas, animals they have co-evolved with for thousands of years, the relationship tends to be more helpful, more mutualistic. But with non-native animals, like domesticated cattle or horses that haven't co-evolved with them, the behavior often shifts down the spectrum towards parasitism. The birds are way more likely to open wounds and drink blood from these unfamiliar hosts.
So, the story of the oxpecker isn't a simple fable. It's a dynamic, adaptable relationship that changes with the situation. And it's a powerful reminder that even the most classic examples in science are often way more complex than they first appear. And it leaves you wondering, doesn't it? What other simple stories are out there, just waiting to be retold?